I still remember the sound of the glass hitting the table. A soft clink. That's all it was. Nothing dramatic. But somehow that sound is burned into my mind forever, because it came a few seconds before everything in my life, everything I thought I understood about love, loyalty, and family, collapsed. That night, I was supposed to celebrate. After 32 years of grinding sleepless nights and losing more than I'd ever gained, I'd finally sold my company for $60 million. $60 million. You'd think that kind of success would make a man feel invincible, but if I've learned anything since then, it's that money doesn't protect you. It just changes the kind of knives people use when they stab you. I booked a quiet dinner with my daughter Claire. She was 23 then, smart, witty, sharp as hell. She'd just finished her MBA, and I'd been secretly grooming her to take over the business one day. But with the sale finalized, I wanted to tell her something else, something I'd been holding back for a long time. I wanted to tell her I was proud of her and that I was sorry. Sorry for the birthdays I missed. Sorry for all the times I made her feel like she came second to a spreadsheet. The restaurant was one of those dimly lit places that smelled of truffle oil and quiet arrogance. The kind where people talk softly because everyone's trying to pretend they're more important than they really are. We sat by the window, watching the rain hit the glass in tiny patterns. She smiled at me and said, "Dad, you finally did it." And for a brief moment, I thought, maybe I actually did. I ordered a bottle of wine. Something expensive, because that's what you do when you're rich. You start confusing price with meaning. The waiter poured it for us, and we toasted to new beginnings. I told her about the deal, about how it felt like shedding a skin I'd worn for half my life. She listened, nodded, smiled at the right moments. But something about her eyes, they didn't match the smile. It's funny how your instincts whisper before your brain catches up, the little hesitations you ignore because you don't want to ruin a good moment. That's what I did. I ignored it. The night moved smoothly at first. We talked about her plans, her boyfriend, her travels. I told her I'd bought a place in Lake Tahoe, somewhere quiet where we could finally spend time together without meetings or deadlines. She said she'd love that. And then, as I leaned back, the waiter approached. He looked uncomfortable, the kind of discomfort that isn't about bad service, it's about bad news. He leaned close, glanced at my daughter, then at me, and said quietly, "Sir, I think your daughter poured something in your glass." For a few seconds, I didn't even register it. I thought he was mistaken. I even laughed and said, "That's impossible." But he didn't laugh. He looked at me with the kind of seriousness you can't fake, the kind that makes your stomach twist before your mind even knows why. I looked at Claire. She froze, completely still. No surprise, no denial, no protest, just a cold, blank expression. The kind that says, "It's too late to pretend." The waiter didn't wait for my reaction. He just stepped back, as if the air between us had become dangerous. I stared at the glass. The wine was dark, almost black in the candlelight. My heart started pounding, not from fear yet, but from confusion. I asked her calmly, "What did you do?" She didn't answer, just blinked, and her eyes softened like she wanted to cry but couldn't. That's when I realized this wasn't some misunderstanding. This was something deliberate. I pushed the glass away. My hands were trembling now. I wanted to believe she was innocent, but there's something about silence. It says more than any lie ever could. "Claire," I said again, slower this time, "tell me you didn't." She looked down at the table, then whispered, "You were never supposed to know." That sentence, that one sentence changed everything I thought I knew about her, about me, about us. I felt the air leave my lungs. I couldn't even find the words to respond. I wanted to shout, to demand answers, but my voice cracked. The waiter quietly left, probably afraid to be part of whatever was unfolding. I sat there, staring at her. My own daughter. The same little girl who used to run to the door when I came home, now sitting across from me like a stranger holding a secret that could destroy me. I asked her again, this time in a whisper, "What did you put in the glass?" Her lips trembled. She finally looked up, her eyes filled with guilt and something else, pity. She said, "It's not what you think." And I laughed. A bitter, broken kind of laugh, because what could possibly make sense after that? I asked, "Then tell me what it is, Claire, because right now I'm imagining every nightmare a father could." She said, "You weren't supposed to drink it yet. I was trying to stop you from making another mistake." Another mistake. That word, another, hit me like a slap. I asked her what she meant, but she stayed silent. I pushed back my chair, the sound loud enough to turn a few heads. I didn't care. I demanded to know what was going on. Finally, she reached into her purse and pulled out a small glass vial, transparent, with a faint blue tint. My pulse spiked. She set it on the table like it was nothing. "It's not poison," she said. "It's something else." The words made no sense, and yet I couldn't take my eyes off that vial. I felt like I was standing outside my own body, watching a scene that couldn't possibly be real. I asked her again, "Then what is it?" She looked me dead in the eye and said, "It's truth serum." For a moment, everything went quiet. I couldn't hear the rain or the murmurs around us, just her voice echoing in my head. Truth serum. Almost laughed again, but I didn't. I was too stunned. "Why?" I managed to ask. "Why would you give that to me?" She said, "Because you've been lying to me for years, and tonight I wanted to know who my father really is." I froze. My throat tightened. I had lied, maybe not in ways she imagined, but in ways that mattered. About her mother, about the business, about the sacrifices that built our fortune. But to see my daughter use that against me, it felt like watching everything I built rot from the inside out. She whispered, "You think money fixes everything, but it doesn't fix the truth." The waiter was watching from the corner, nervous. I could see the manager hovering nearby, unsure whether to intervene, but I didn't care anymore. I wasn't thinking about the restaurant or the stairs or the deal I'd closed. All I could think was how a lifetime of power, success, and control meant nothing if the person I loved most didn't trust me enough to ask for the truth. She had to force it. And then she said something that sent chills through me. "He told me everything, Dad." I blinked. "Who?" She hesitated, as if saying the name would make it real. Then she said softly, "Uncle David." And that's when I realized this night wasn't about celebration at all. It was an ambush. The air felt heavier. My hands went cold. I stared at her and said, "What did he tell you?" She didn't answer, just stared at the untouched glass between us. I could see it now, the perfect trap. I'd walked right into it, smiling, thinking I was finally free. But I wasn't free. I just stepped into the part of my life where every secret I'd buried was about to be dug up and laid on the table. And what came next, I wouldn't wish on anyone. She looked at me with those same eyes that used to search for approval, but this time there was something else in them. Anger. Not the kind that explodes, but the kind that's been simmering for years, slowly eating away at whatever love was left underneath. I could feel it in the way she gripped her fork, the tension in her shoulders, the way she wouldn't blink when I tried to meet her gaze. "David told me everything," she repeated, her voice low but steady. "About Mom. About the deal. About what really happened that night." I didn't know which night she meant. There were too many nights that could have ruined me if the truth ever got out. I felt my chest tighten as I tried to remember which lie had finally come back to collect. "Claire," I said quietly, "you need to tell me exactly what he told you." She leaned forward. "You really want to do this here?" "Yes," I said, because I already knew there was no safe place left. She sighed. "He told me that Mom didn't leave because of you working too much. He told me she left because she found out what you did to get that first investment, that you ruined someone's life, that you used people and left them with nothing." Her words were knives, and the worst part was, she wasn't wrong, but I wanted to defend myself, to say she didn't understand how the world works, how power isn't built by playing fair. But before I could speak, she continued. "He told me that you paid her off, that you made her sign an NDA before the divorce, so she couldn't tell me anything." The restaurant felt smaller now. The air was thick, and the low hum of conversations around us turned into static. I rubbed my temples and said, "Your uncle doesn't know what he's talking about." She smiled, cold, hollow. "Then why does every word make sense?" Because it was true, every word. I stared at her, my throat dry. I wanted to explain that it wasn't that simple, that back then I didn't have choices. I had survival. I built an empire from nothing. When you're drowning, you don't ask whose head you step on to stay afloat. You just do it. But try explaining that to a daughter who grew up never knowing what it's like to need anything. I finally said, "There are things I did that I'm not proud of, but they were necessary." "Necessary?" she snapped. "You call destroying people necessary?" "Yes," I said, sharper than I meant to. "Because if I didn't, we wouldn't be sitting here right now. You wouldn't have your education, your life, your comfort. Everything you have came from those choices." Her eyes glistened, but she didn't look away. "Then maybe I don't want any of it." That hurt more than anything she'd said so far. I leaned back, trying to steady my breathing, but it only made me realize how fragile the moment was. Every second that passed felt like watching years of effort crumble, brick by brick. I looked down at the glass again. The dark wine reflected the candlelight, and for a second, I thought about drinking it, maybe to prove a point, maybe to show her that I wasn't afraid. But deep down, I was. Not of the serum, but of the truth it might drag out of me, the kind I'd buried even from myself. She noticed my hesitation. "You're afraid," she said. "I'm not afraid," I replied, even though my voice said otherwise. "Yes, you are. You've spent your whole life controlling everything and everyone around you. But you can't control this. Not me. Not tonight." Her words were like echoes of my own philosophy turned against me. Control was the foundation of my success. Every move calculated, every decision made with precision. But now, sitting across from my daughter, I realized I'd lost the one thing I couldn't buy back: trust. She pushed the glass toward me. "Drink it." I stared at her. "You're serious?" "Yes. If you've really got nothing to hide, prove it." I could feel people watching us now, sensing the tension without knowing why. I hated being on display. Power isn't supposed to look desperate, but she had me cornered, and she knew it. I took a slow breath and said, "If I drink it, you'll regret it." "Maybe," she said, "but at least I'll know." My hand trembled as I picked up the glass. It was heavier than it should have been. I looked at her one last time, trying to find some trace of the girl who used to fall asleep in my arms after bedtime stories. But she wasn't there anymore. Only the woman who wanted the truth, no matter what it cost. I raised the glass halfway to my lips and then stopped. "Why are you doing this, Claire?" She hesitated. "Because I don't know who you are anymore." That hit me harder than any accusation could. Because she was right. I didn't know who I was either. I'd become a collection of calculated choices, of deals and betrayals and sacrifices disguised as victories. I set the glass down. "You think this will make things better? You think the truth fixes anything?" She said quietly, "It's not about fixing. It's about knowing." And with that, she stood up, slowly, calmly, and she walked away from the table. I didn't call after her. I just sat there, surrounded by half-empty glasses and a silence so thick it felt alive. I thought that was the end of it, that she needed space, that we'd talk again later. But the moment she walked out that door, I felt something shift inside me, a warning I didn't yet understand. I waited a few minutes, then reached for the bill. But before I could leave, the waiter came back. Same nervous face, but now he was holding something, my phone. "Sir," he said carefully, "you might want to see this." It was recording. I frowned, confused. I didn't remember starting any recording. He handed it to me, and sure enough, the voice memo app was open. The timestamp showed it had been running since before Claire sat down. I pressed play. Her voice came through first. Calm. Controlled. "He's here. I'll make sure he drinks it. Once he starts talking, I'll ask about Mom, about the deal, about the accounts." And then another voice, one I hadn't heard in years. "David, my brother." "Good. We just need him to confess. Everything he's hidden is going to come out tonight." The restaurant around me seemed to disappear. I couldn't feel my hands anymore. My own brother, my own daughter, setting me up, not for answers, not for truth, but for something bigger. I replayed the clip 3 times, each time catching details I'd missed, the clinking of glasses, the nervous laugh, the way she said, "Don't worry, he'll trust me." I sat there, numb, because in that moment, I realized the truth serum wasn't meant to uncover what I'd done. It was meant to destroy me, publicly. And somewhere between the silence and the rain tapping against the window, I felt it. Something deep in my gut telling me this wasn't just betrayal. It was a takeover. And the next move wasn't going to be hers. I didn't leave the restaurant right away. I just sat there, staring at that phone, at the recording that played my own destruction in real time. My reflection in the black screen didn't even look like me anymore. It looked like a man who'd spent his life mastering control, only to lose it all in one quiet dinner. The waiter hovered near the corner again, pretending to rearrange silverware. I could tell he wanted to ask if I was all right, but he didn't dare. No one ever does when they sense something powerful is cracking. They just watch, silently, waiting to see what breaks first. When I finally stood up, the room tilted a little. I left the wine, the bill, the vial, everything. Outside, the rain had turned heavier. The city lights blurred against the wet pavement, and all I could hear was the echo of my brother's voice. "We just need him to confess." I called Claire, straight to voicemail, called again. Nothing. Then I called David. This time, he answered. His tone was calm, rehearsed, almost like he'd been expecting the call. "Hey, brother," he said. "Don't brother me," I snapped. "What the hell did you tell her?" He sighed, almost bored. "Relax. I told her the truth, the one you never had the courage to." "You manipulated her," I said, my voice breaking through the rain. "You used her." "She came to me, not the other way around," he replied. "She was already looking for answers. I just gave her what she deserved to know." "And what do you deserve, David?" I said quietly. "Because something tells me this isn't about justice." He chuckled. "You always did think the world revolved around your intentions. It's not about what I deserve. It's about what's right." "Don't give me that moral bullshit," I said. "You've hated me since the day I took the company public. You think I forgot what you did?" Silence. Then he said, "You stole everything, and you call that business. I call it theft. Maybe now the world will too." That's when it hit me. This wasn't just personal. He was planning something bigger, something public. The recording, the serum, the dinner, all of it was a setup to expose me, to destroy my reputation, the company name, everything attached to it. I said, "What did you do, David?" He didn't answer directly, just laughed and said, "You should check your email." The call ended. I opened my phone. Dozens of notifications popped up, emails, messages, alerts. At first, I didn't understand. Then I saw it. A headline from a major business outlet. "Former CEO under investigation. Insider claims $60. Sale built on fraud and concealment." My chest tightened. I clicked it open. There it was. Statements, screenshots, confidential details that only someone close to me could have known. My brother's name wasn't anywhere, but his fingerprints were all over it. And then at the bottom was a line that made my blood run cold. "Anonymous sources confirm evidence may surface within 24 hours, including a recorded confession." That's when I realized the recording from the dinner wasn't meant for me to hear. It was meant for them. It was already sent. I stood in the rain, phone trembling in my hand as the realization sank in. My own daughter had helped them do it. Not because she hated me, but because she believed she was uncovering the truth. And David, he'd played her perfectly. I got in my car and just sat there. No music, no movement. Just the sound of the rain tapping on the windshield, rhythmic, like a countdown. I thought about driving to her apartment, thought about confronting her, about explaining everything. But how do you explain betrayal when you're the reason it began? Instead, I drove home. The house was quiet, too quiet. I poured myself a drink but didn't touch it. My mind was spinning through every detail. How long had this been planned? When did she start doubting me? When did David reach her? I walked into my study and stared at the framed photo on my desk. The three of us, taken 20 years ago. Me, holding Claire on my shoulders, and David beside me, smiling like we were invincible. I remember thinking back then that family was the one thing I'd never lose. But here we were, proof that you can build an empire and still end up alone at the top. I played the recording again. Her voice cracked when she said, "He'll trust me." That word trust burned in my chest like acid. Around midnight, my phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. "You had your chance to tell her the truth. Now the world will hear it for you." Attached was a link. I hesitated, then tapped it. It led to a private video upload, unlisted, but already with thousands of views. The thumbnail showed me and Claire at that restaurant table. The angle was from the corner, probably the waiter's camera. I hit play. The video showed everything. Our conversation, the confrontation, her sliding the glass toward me refusing to drink it. But the audio, God, the audio was edited. They'd cut it to make me sound guilty. My pauses twisted into admissions. My silence turned into confirmation. "Your daughter deserves to know what kind of man you are," I heard myself say in the clip. But that wasn't what I said. Not like that. They'd taken fragments, rearranged them, built a confession I never made. My stomach dropped. The comments were already flooding in. Monster. Greedy pig. No wonder she drugged him. I slammed the laptop shut. The walls felt like they were closing in. Everything I'd built, decades of discipline, strategy, sacrifice, was being shredded by a 10-minute video. And the worst part? I didn't even know how much of it Claire believed. I called her again. Still no answer. Called again. Finally, she picked up. "Dad?" Her voice was shaky. "Claire, listen to me," I said. "That video, it's fake. They edited it. You have to believe me." There was a pause. Then she said, "I don't know what to believe anymore." Please, I begged, just come home. Let me explain everything. She hesitated. You're not safe, she whispered. They're coming for you. My heart stopped. Who? Before she could answer, the line went dead. I stared at the phone, my hand frozen. Then, through the silence, I heard something. Soft footsteps outside. A car door. Another. Voices. I walked to the window and looked out. Black sedans. At least 3. Men stepping out in suits, holding something in their hands. Flashlights. Papers. A knock echoed through the front door. Firm. Rhythmic. Mr. Porter, a voice called. We have a warrant. And in that moment, as I stood there in the dark, I realized what the $60 million had really bought me. Not freedom, not peace, just enough power to make enemies worth this kind of revenge. The knocks grew louder, and somewhere inside that sound, I could hear the faintest trace of my brother's laughter.